Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 11th edition of our Ankur Capital Dialogues. We're here today to talk about the number 21 and 2021 more specifically. And I was reading The Economist, was it a couple of weeks back or something, and I learned some new things about this number 21, that it's all about luck, risk, taking chances and rolling the dice. It's the number of spots on a dice. It's the number of shillings in a guinea, which apparently is what horse racing folks use. And it's the minimum age that you can enter a casino. It's also a number in blackjack. So, we're here to chat about what's going to happen in this year. Is it a gamble? Will we get lucky? And where's that new normal going to end up at? Yeah. So at Ankur, we've been focused at investing in technologies for disruptions for the next billion. And last year brought these words, to us in a new light. While we've had the privilege of watching entrepreneurs build companies and disrupt different sectors and markets, these words took on a new meaning. This was a disruption like no other in a time frame like no other. And you realize deep down that, technology came in and took its spot. We all needed to talk to each other. We all still needed to be social. We all needed to transact, exchange information, and technology conveniently stepped in. This disruption, spread across all swaths of society. We saw farmers buying inputs online at a rate that hadn't happened before. We had to figure out how to invest on Zoom and do due diligence on Zoom. And B2B companies had to figure out how to sell globally to clients that were very used to having face-to-face meetings. And a lot of people who had been like, I don't really want this technology. When I'm knocking on your door saying, hey, can you do something for me, right? But this hit home to me with, the vegetable seller down the road who I couldn't get through on his phone. And he told me, said that, what to do, madam? My son has my phone. He's in mobile class. So he said, I don't know what this mobile class is. He's always in class anytime I ask for the phone. Lekin class ke piche ho kya raha hai, mujhe kya pata? I resonated with me. My kids are behind a screen. God knows what's happening, class or no class. And I realized it doesn't matter which part of, what kind of mobile class you were happening. We were all, as parents, having the exact same problem here. So all parts of society was kind of, coming to terms with this new normals that were happening, right? The other thing that was super exciting, which for me personally was very exciting, was that, entrepreneurs being entrepreneurs use this situation to do all sorts of things, right? So whether it was Geeta, one of our investees, who, took her solution from looking at breast cancer to saying, how can I scan for fever in crowded places, to, people who are working on gated community apps, all of a sudden using their apps to track, people who are sort of infected. So entrepreneurs, at the core of it, enjoy this. And it was absolutely amazing to sort of see that happen. But what will stay, what will go, what are the new things that will come? And I am honored to have two gentlemen with me here to talk about this. Both of them either have been or are entrepreneurs. They both also are investors. And you know what? I also discovered that both of them have a passion for making sure that people meet their partners in life. So Tarun, I didn't know this, but Step Out was about dating, and of course, Sanjeev, you've got Jeevan Sathi there. So that I learned along the way here. So Sanjeev, who needs no introduction, is co-founder of Naukri, 99 Acres, Jeevan Sathi, investor in Zomato, Policy Bazaar, Merit Nation, and also a trustee at Ashoka University. So obviously done a lot of stuff. But what I'm super curious, Sanjeev, today, and I'm so excited to hear from you, is, you like to talk about these customer insights, and I'd love to sort of hear the insights that you've been having during this tumultuous period, and sort of, what will that bring for us coming forward. Tarun is, of course, partner and managing director at Matrix. As I said earlier, he's obviously had entrepreneurial stints. And of course, as Matrix sits across lots of different companies, that what's interesting to me, Tarun, is that they sit across different markets in a lot of your investments. So I'd love to sort of, get your views and your ringside view of sort of things that are bubbling in sort of, are they merging together? Are they separating out? Right. So with that, I will sort of dive into My first question for you, gentlemen. And if I had to pick one word, if I had to get you to pick one word that would, for you, describe this coming year, right? What would you choose? Sanjeev, may I start with you?
Look, it's going to be a good bounce back. But having said that, look, it's been a difficult year for many people. I think several people have passed away. I think we must acknowledge
Recognize
that, and
that.
their pain, their family and loved ones' pain. And those of us who are here on this call have been fortunate. But I personally know about 30 or 35 people who have either passed away or have lost a loved one, somebody in their immediate family or extended family. Right. So I think we must, first of all, pay our respects to them. We must also recognize that, look, it's not fully over yet. Right? It's still there. It'll take a year or two for mass vaccination in India. The news that's coming out right now for India is seemingly good, right? That it's receding, some reason why, inexplicable reasons why, India didn't get the brunt of it, and we coped with it well, all of those things. And fingers crossed, hopefully, there won't be another wave in India. If there is, of course, things get delayed a bit. However, look, the 11% at the macro level, the 11% growth this year in GDP that the economic survey has estimated, to my mind, is conservative. If there's no new wave, if there are no new lockdowns, I do believe the growth should and could be higher. Reason being simple, arithmetically, right? Quarter one, this April, June, last year was minus 24 point some percent growth, which means that if April, June 2019 was 100, 2020 was 75 approximately. If you just go back to 2019 levels, you had a 33% growth. So if in quarter one, April, June, the GDP grows less than 33% YOY,
yeah,
it's an underachievement.
It's an underachievement.
Right? In fact, there should be positive growth beyond that. Now, if you are just level to 2019, right, in quarter one, right, and then you flatline for the rest of the year, you will still get 7% growth, 8% growth for the year.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, hopefully you're going to grow. So to my mind, 11% is conservative, right? Now, let's say you grow 12, 13, 14% YOY of a bad year, right? So essentially over 2019, you haven't grown much, you've grown a little bit, but you've grown a lot over last year. I think sentiment will be back. I think buying will be back. I think a lot of the old methods of living, consuming, working will be back. Right? The real issue is, has COVID gone away? So I see with some cautious optimism, some caution on the COVID front, the one word I would choose is bounce back.
Great. And that just made, we should remember the people who've actually lost their lives, right? It really has been. And let's fingers crossed that this doesn't really come back, but a bounce back. And I'm going to come back to you on that word bounce back, Sanjeev, and from a startup ecosystem perspective as to sort of how you see that. Tarun, but before I do, Tarun, your thoughts.
So firstly, Ritu, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on this panel with Sanjeev sir and you. So really appreciate you inviting me for this. I will actually pick two words with your permission and not one word. I think echoing Sanjeev's thoughts, obviously on the personal loss and the personal tragedy. I think in my mind, 2021 is going to be about a digital leapfrogging. Right. I think while the broader economy, will bounce back, as Sanjeev has said, I think digital we have seen was obviously a pillar of, a lot of industries in continuing to function in 2020. I think we are on a, hopefully what is going to be a decade or a multi-decade sort of digital adventure for India. And I just see so many trends where different industries have just kind of taken it to the next level with digital adoption through the last 12 months. So I think we will see a lot of leapfrogging happening.
And Tarun, if I may stay on you, right? Do you see that happening across companies that you interact with, that which this leapfrogging, from a 2019 to a 2021, that across this?
So
Or is it
several of
still
them
early days?
actually. No, several of them. It's surprising. I mean, if you just take again, and some of these numbers are public, some of them aren't. Like if you take some of the largest e-commerce companies in India today, right? If you compare their October, November, December 2020 numbers versus October, November, December 2019 numbers, I mean, these are 30 to 50% higher, right? And it's not that COVID has completely gone away, right? Like Sanjeev said, we all are still living with it. And with all the sort of trade-offs that comes with in terms of supply chains and stuff like that. But the numbers we are seeing in some of these companies are, I mean, they're growing faster of a larger base.
Okay. Okay. So if I come back, Sanjeev, to what you said, right, about the growth and, I mean, we're coming off a bad year, right? So there is, well, hopefully unless this year goes in a completely different direction, right, that 11% is a low ball thing here, right?
In my view, but I mean, look, the informal sector has been badly hit and may not come back so fast. I think migrant labor was badly hit. So those are the imponderables, which we can't really measure. But my sense is 11% is conservative.
Yeah. So when you say bounce back, and when we talk about sort of companies that you work with, Sanjeev, like what's the bounce back that you see? So is this the bounce back from the lockdown days that things have come back to normal, or do you see what Tarun?
So most of our businesses, well, a few were not impacted, right, by the lockdown, but most were impacted at least initially, right, and then they began to come back, right. I would say that Q3 everything is back substantially.
Okay, and beating what your expectations, or just back?
So look, in April. Or March last week or April. So we were lucky, you see. So, we are slightly paranoid. And when those videos from Wuhan first surfaced on WhatsApp, on our various college and, business school groups, I got very alarmed, especially when I began to realize this could spread worldwide. And what is this mystery disease? We don't know how contagious it is. We know it can be lethal. So we took one resource out of our CSR team. And I said, half day, you just track this disease.
Wow. Out of your CSR team to track the disease. That's pretty.
One person.
Okay.
Okay. Half day. We were still doing CSR. We didn't abandon CSR. I said, you track karo yaar. No, we didn't have anybody else to do it who could do it. So we began to get MIS on this thing early, let's say in Jan. Right. Now, if you recall, the first case that happened, that was publicized in India, was this gentleman who came on an Air India flight from Milan, landed in Delhi, then went to the Hyatt, went to Noida, Mayur Vihar, and then went to Agra, right? So it was coming in the papers, and so I said, okay, fine. But then one morning, we got an email from one of our colleagues saying, listen, my wife was cabin crew on that flight, and she has been asked to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I think I should also not come in. And let me work from home, right? And that's when we said, oh, it's getting close. And I think, in hindsight, very, very smart decision we took was, listen, let's just figure out if we can work from home, just in case, who knows, right? We actually migrated to work from home 10 days before the lockdown. So we were ready and prepared. Right, and that
you knew what was coming.
We didn't know. We were just saying, who knows?
Right? The gut level, there was some premonition.
If you're slightly paranoid, you will sort of overcompensate, right? And that's what we did. And I think that was a really good thing we did, because we were able to, on the day the lockdown happened, we were already working from home, and all wrinkles were ironed out.
Right.
And that helped us a lot. But even so, now what we business was down, because look, if people are hiring, they will not buy hiring solutions. Right? If there's a lockdown, there's no way anybody's going to buy property.
Right.
There's no way anybody's going to sell property. There's no way anybody is going to spend money trying to sell property. Right? Zomato was disrupted for the first 20 days, even though food services were essential. So, number one, restaurants were shut. Their backward supply chain not working. Their employees couldn't come to the restaurant. In any case, nobody dining out was over, right? And people are scared to order in. So if restaurants are shut, where would the food for Zomato deliver come? If dining out is shut, why will any restaurant spend on advertising? right? In any case, by the time it trickled down to the policeman on the street that, listen, it's okay to let a guy with a Zomato t-shirt go on his motorcycle to deliver. Took 3 weeks. And there the Zomato team had to go SHO by SHO, explaining, here's the Home Ministry circular. It says food service is illegal. So please allow our guys, tell your guys. Half the deliverers anyway went home. They were not from the cities where they're working. So as part of the migrant labor movement back, they went home. So delivery fleet was halved. But gradually it began to come back, right? And today Zomato is in a very good place. Its revenues are higher than ever before. Its unit economics are great. It's close to break even. It's got a whole line of investors pounding its door to be allowed to invest, right? And things are all right. Policybazaar, on the other hand, grew right through the lockdown. Health insurance went up. But Paisabazaar had a problem because people couldn't go out and do KYC. In Naukri, our sales method was, going and meeting clients. So sales guys could earlier do 2.5 meetings a day. Now they were doing 12 to 13 meetings a day. Of course, clients were not buying because they were not hiring. But sales productivity in terms of number of meetings went up 5x. And Hitesh could join any meeting anywhere in the country, from his desk at home, right? Paisabazaar had a problem because people couldn't go out to do KYC. In any case, customers didn't want people to come to the house, and lenders didn't want to lend necessarily because of the moratorium. They didn't know when they got the money back, right? Shop Kirana, on the other hand, 2 weeks disruption. Took time to explain to the local authorities that, listen, we are essential. When that has happened, business was booming, way above pre-COVID.
So what I'm hearing you say is that, basically the couple of things that happened here, one was obviously, I'm going back to your sales efficiency here, saying that, look, it just unlocked a new method of selling. There may have been a macro problem of people buying per se for whatever time, but that efficiency, as people's sentiments are coming back, is something that's staying and helping in the bounce back happen.
Yeah, so listen, I would imagine you go back to a hybrid model. You will still do some sales meetings, physically face-to-face, but there'll be a lot more of video conferencing happening. I used to hate video conferencing.
Right.
No, and anytime those investor meeting video conferencing, I tell the CFO Chintan, boss to kar le yaar. I was just had a mental block. But now I'm sitting in my basement and, I'm Zooming, early in the morning till late at night.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we'll seek some balance going forward.
There probably will be, but initially even customers will be a little apprehensive about inviting people over for a sales call.
Yeah.
So they'll be more open to buying, closing a deal online.
No, Ritu, we have a bunch of D2C brands we've invested in, and pre-pandemic, one of the only ways if they had to crack GT was essentially basically have an army of feet on street where they would go, try and get distribution, try and get shelf space, etc. And we've always wondered what it would take to change that, right? Because eventually the buyer, which is the retailer in this case, was just not open. And I mean, the typical attitude was, "Haan, dophar ko aa jana," right? And let me see your products and whatever. Today, the openness of these retailers to look at a digital offering, to look at sort of, okay, what are the products, what are customer reviews, what is the feedback, how is it selling online, what is the pricing, who's the target consumer segment, and then also do a potential sort of video meeting. It is just unprecedented, right? And I don't think these
despite
behaviors,
the fact that they can meet today.
Yes, and now some of them are open to meeting, but the fact that they were able to trial this new way of doing things during the pandemic, I think it is the openness to exploring this is hopefully will stay. And like you said, eventually we will revert back to the mean, but it will not go back to where it used to be. Right. So there will definitely be some sort of delta shift that has happened.
So this was a very expensive in terms of lives lost and everything else as well, of habit change in all of us, I guess, right? Of just driving that through. Yeah. I have a question, right? And I'm coming back again, we look at these markets, which we call mass markets, or the next billion over here, right? From both your vantage points and whether portfolios, etc., is there a difference that you see? Tarun, you talked about digital leapfrogging, right? So has one segment but more naturally taken to it, the other been still more reluctant, or is it just the same? Or, what would you say? if you were to
So let me give you, I think Sanjeev, described different companies and different sort of sectors really well. Let me do an attempt at, sharing a little bit across our portfolio what we saw, right? So if I take Ola, right, it's in the mobility space. Obviously, if people are sitting at home and they are not mobile, a mobility company is going to get hit, right? I actually think Ola will look back at the last 12 months and say this was, it was, like I said, painfully on the personal front. But from a business front, it's probably the best thing that could have happened to the company, right? They've gone, I mean, there's been a solid recovery in several cities. They are well above 100% of what they used to be pre-COVID. In some other cities, they're at 60, 70%, primarily where it is largely a migrant tech population. So because most large tech companies in Bangalore and Pune and Hyderabad are still work from home, obviously the mobility in those cities hasn't returned back normal. But ironically, Bombay, Delhi, even Chennai, a lot of these cities, in fact, tier 2, tier 3 towns are more than 100% of pre-COVID, right? But what they've used the last 12 months to do, and maybe Zomato did something similar, is surgically look at cost and say, hey, what do I need to do so that this business is viable at maybe 50% of the scale? And that's what we started the year saying, hey, let's say it takes us 12 months or 18 months to come back to 50%, but can I have a fundamentally stronger balance sheet and a fundamentally stronger P&L? And so Ola is more profitable than it's ever been. It generates positive EBITDA, generates positive cash. Like I said, there's multiple things that have changed. In terms of like media companies, right? If I take Daily Hunt, which is again in our portfolio, they obviously have benefited because more people have been spending time indoors and especially consuming news, where Daily Hunt is largely about news. I mean, they've had more traction across their products than they've ever seen. They've had more advertisers who are lining up because IPL was delayed and multiple other things on the things that were delayed. They've had more advertisers say, hey, all the eyeballs are actually going to these digital news platforms and digital platforms. Large advertisers that were probably never looking at these platforms because the budgets didn't make sense for them, or it was too small in terms of TG. All of these people are saying, hey, you know what? I can't get 50 to 100 million eyeballs anywhere else. Right. And they all are starting to talk to these companies.
Right.
If I look at e-commerce, right, and D2C brands, I mean, it has been amazing to see everything from a factory to a small business owner or a retailer and eventually the customer. At every single stage, the adoption of technology has been something that we haven't seen. So Sanjeev and us are investors in this company called Business, right, which is basically a B2B company for shoes and apparel. The adoption, I mean, they're launching something called what they call the factory app, but the fact that today a small retailer that is selling shoes is opening up an app to say, hey, what are the different shoes that I can carry in my stock, right? I don't think any of this stuff, like I said, it would have happened much more organically, and which is why I said I think the leapfrogging is something that we're seeing as just a trend across different companies.
So it doesn't matter which segment, doesn't matter whether it was a very brick and mortar segment that was resistant to it, doesn't matter whether I was in Mumbai or whether I was in a much smaller tier 3 town. Everybody was basically shifting. Yeah,
in fact, tier 2, tier 3 has been significantly more. So if you look at, I mean, numbers coming out from the likes of, Myntra or Meesho or, any of these companies, and I'm sure, Zomato and a bunch of other companies are showing similar trends. It's actually tier 2, tier 3 customer growth is higher than it's ever been.
But why is that, Tarun? What's your
I think, again, if you see in some of the cities, right, I think I was talking to somebody from Amazon today, right, and they said our priority is get the first 100 million on Prime and get the next 100 million to start transacting online. Right? Very, very clear goal. I think what's happened in the pandemic is the next 100 million has experienced transacting online for the first time. Right? The first 100 million was already online. All of us were already placing orders online.
So you're saying the growth, the base was low. So this grew at a much higher level. Got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like I'll tell you, my mother, right? I mean, while she's in a tier 1 city, she was clearly tier 2, tier 3 in terms of her online behavior.
Usage, yeah.
She is now a, avid consumer of all these apps. I mean, she knows every Netflix show and she knows every, grocery ordering app, and she's using them herself now.
She's using them herself. Sanjeev, would you concur that, across different kinds of segments, right, that, the change or the adoption of all of these digital tools has actually been, similar. And because the second tiers and third tiers were starting at a lower pace, the growth in that has been higher?
Look, digital tools are adopted. But understand one thing, human beings are fundamentally social.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think this work from home thing is forever and permanent and universal, it's not true.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can't have a situation 3 years out. Hey, what's your company culture like? I don't know. I've not met anybody last 3 years. Right? You can't have a situation. Oh, I was inducted into my company. We only induct over Zoom.
Zoom.
You want to be able to walk about, wander into people's cabins. You can't brainstorm over Zoom. Okay.
Yeah. That chai pick on
it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
Second thing I want to say is that fundamentally people don't change.
Yeah, I mean the basic human.
अगर COVID 14 साल चले और 14 साल हमें वर्क फ्रॉम करना पड़े और 14 साल हमें रिमोट बाइंग करनी पड़े और रिमोट लर्निंग करनी पड़े, तब शायद लोग चेंज हो जाएंगे. Right? But otherwise, once COVID goes, vaccination universal, it'll be back to normal. What has happened, however, is a few mental blocks have been overcome.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? I am now prepared to meet on Zoom.
Yeah.
I am now prepared to say, okay, fine, I'll do 3 meetings a day in person and rest I'll just dial up. Yeah. So some sort of hybrid model will evolve. At the end of the day, if you look at today, initially, a lot of people were just buying on Amazon groceries and, big basket or whatever. But markets are full now, in Delhi at least.
Yeah. And they're crowded too, basically.
Yeah, they're full, they're crowded, they're back to normal. So life is, life is bounced back in that sense.
Yeah, and I guess, as you said, this is hopefully not long enough. So perhaps it's not going to be that deep. Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Sanjeev? And I think you're sitting at a very good vantage point for this, right? So I think, I remember about 3 years back, I was at one of these companies that has a very large workforce that, is on a computer, putting in different widgets, etc., whatever, creating web shots and screenshots, etc. And it's a huge office, right? Which is people packed. Obviously, these people had come from all over. Right. And the founder had invested in getting a large office and seating and all of that good stuff. Right. Now, this work from home, right? While I completely agree with you that, there is a part of human nature that you just can't overcome this way. Right. But do you see jobs, right? Do you see jobs splitting in some respects, right? Maybe there are events that you have, but do I have to have everybody in a Mumbai and a Bangalore? Or can we have some more remote teams working? Because
I think, look, if you asked me 15 months back, do you think in your company you could do remote working? We didn't let a single employee do remote working.
Yeah.
Because we are very much a old school, I'm 57, right? We are pretty much a old school, face-to-face, line of sight kind of company, right? But I've been very surprised by the last 12 months, 11 months. So am I more open to today? Answer is yes. Are we all more open to? Answer is yes. Maybe we'll move to a situation where, so we used to have issues like we are based in Noida. So we know that if a person lives in Gurgaon but has to commute to Noida every day, within 6 months he leaves the company. So our talent catchment area largely was
Noida
or Delhi, but a Noida commute is essential.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially, if somebody was wedded to Gurgaon, right, kids go to school there, wife works there, we own the house, parents live there, it would become very hard for us to hire and retain. So stuff like that can work. Stuff like recruiting from Bangalore, they must stay in Bangalore and work. Stuff like, okay, we'll take up, in a office in a co-working space, we'll take, in a private zone in that, we'll take 20 seats, that 20 people working in Bangalore.
And Sanjay, do you see this?
So I think it has given us, in our own heads, it's given us that flexibility.
Yeah, but do you see
we could have done it anyway. We could have done it anyway, even before COVID. We just didn't.
It just was a block in our heads, right?
Yeah.
Do you see this bubbling on a Naukri?
So look, in the first 3 months of, maybe 5 months of, of last financial year, of this financial year, I think number of remote working, work from home kind of jobs went up 7x on Naukri.
On Naukri.
Of a small base,
Small base. But yeah, that's just interesting.
That work from home is fine. Enough people are now telling us, our own workforce, It's telling us, hey guys, give us 3 weeks notice before you open the office and want us to come back.
Right, because they're not there.
They're not there. I need time.
Yeah.
Right? Enough people are telling us, hey, can you get me a work from home job permanently?
Right.
So I think certain mindsets have been unshackled.
Unshackled over here. And Sanjeev, my erstwhile employer launched a nano factory, right, which I would have never ever imagined that they would have done. Right? Do you see, because supply chains took a hit, right? Like if you were like in this consolidated way, right? So do you see any of that bubbling through Naukri in terms of saying that or otherwise, are we just too vested at this point and it's too early in the new?
It's too early to assess. I think some things may change permanently. Most things won't, and a few hybrid models may emerge.
Right.
Yeah. Ritu, my view on this.
Understand one thing. You see, you may say XYZ Digital has grown 4x, but if it grows 4x from 1% of the total pie, it is still only 4%.
Right.
The base matters.
The base is important. Tarun, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'll just say, again, multiple, I think, like Sanjeev said, I think each company and each function will eventually revert to what I think is their comfort. And we're seeing different things. In our portfolio, we've got companies that have now made it mandatory work from office again for 100% of the staff. I have got other founders who are telling me that, hey, you know what, there are these 2-3 functions that honestly I'm just okay to let them work remotely for as long as they want. They always will have a hot desk in the office. So on a particular day, if 20, 30, 40% of that particular team wants to come in and do some brainstorming or do some ideation or do a huddle, that's fine, but we're not going to mandate it, right? And so I think in my mind, 2 big themes are going to come out of this, right? One is there will be more acceptance that certain functions, and especially because people have, to their positive surprise, realized that certain functions are actually more productive remote, right? Now, whether that's tech and engineering, whether that's customer support, whatever it may be, I think people will move to some blend, right? It could be 80-20, 50-50, whatever that number is, each company will decide. But there will be certain functions where I think it's great for the country, because today every engineer beyond a point doesn't want to, live and work in a Gurgaon or a Bangalore or whatever.
Yeah.
And you will find, smaller towns and cities where, engineers will be happy to live there and just work for, the larger company. So I think that one big trend we will see. The second is we've also, there's this theme around the whole creator economy, right? And where there is a lot of people who have skills everywhere from, online fitness to yoga to, sports, to take anything. It's amazing. And we're seeing this again across so many different platforms. These people were basically beholden to a small set of people where they were very local. And they've actually again started using these tools, and there's different companies out building tools for these creators online to say, hey, you know what, how do I give them distribution? And second, how do I give them tools to monetize and engage their subscribers, right? And I think that is also very good for the country, because there's a lot of talent that is there in the smaller cities, and today they just weren't able to sort of get access to it. Right? Take a look at education, right? For the first time, tier 2, tier 3 India, tier 2, tier 3 Indian students will get the same quality of education through the likes of an academy or a Vedantu or a Topper, or take any of these, right? Or Testbook in our portfolio, where these people for the first time will get access to the same quality of teachers that a student in a tier 1 city got access to. So I think there will be.
That's absolutely, the democratization of this in some respects, right? So both whether you can work from somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And still be part of something without having to physically move to these mega centers that we've created. And at the parallelly the same way of, if you're really good, giving you access to customers, right?
Yes.
Where you are. And that it goes in this whole, EdTech obviously has been obviously I like to think it's now like the Kleenex, right? So yes, I was reading a story which says, is AgTech the EdTech, so it's like, okay, it's become like that sort of a term, and obviously it has exploded through the roof, right? I think the question for me, Sanjeev, I will, I just concur. I mean, I think that for some parts of this education business, it cannot stay as EdTech the way it is, right? I mean, there is the human need for children to learn, it will sort of be something that will come back. here, right? And some parts of it will stay. But I think the question that I still struggle with, it, let's take your Unacademy, let's take any of this, right? At the end of the day, the skills I get from it, right, have to be valued by the employer here, right? So I have to believe that this is a valuable place, this was a good place, the education was good that has happened here, right? Any trends that you see on that, right? And that, I think somewhere EdTech was supplementary in many ways, and you still needed, and the IITs or whatever else that you may call it. So do you see this having changed the game, or do you see that, the Sanjeev, the Ashokas of the world, the IITs of the world will now open their eyes to
students are writing in, maybe please come back to campus. We want to come back to campus.
They want to come back to campus.
The IIMs are calling people, IIMs calling people back to campus. St. Stephen's has opened campus, right? See, college is not about listening to a lecture remotely. It's about a social experience. Whole experience, yeah. It's about living in the dorm. It's about, doing adda till 3 a.m. It's about going to the college canteen. It's about, going to see a movie, then cinema all closed. I mean, it's all that. I always say that 90% of my education, I'm outside the classroom.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the classroom also, there's class interaction.
Absolutely.
There is no way. There is no way. See, if COVID is tamed, this is all coming back.
So then what does EdTech do?
No, EdTech reaches out to masses. EdTech reaches out to, I'm at least now open to listening to a lecture online. I've got used to, watching somebody on Zoom and then taking notes, raising my hand here to ask a question, and the person answers the question. So I'm open to that. But for formal degrees, okay. So understand one thing. What is so great about IIT? Tarun, are you from IIT?
No, but it's a. Can I answer that question? It's essentially a signaling. It's a signaling device, right? Essentially, that's what.
No. What's so great about IIT is that 99% of students get rejected. You're taking the top 1%, putting them in one cohort.
Screening mechanism.
No. You put them in one cohort. They learn from each other. They interact. They do projects together. They discuss. They're in the hostels and norms. They attend a class together. Quality of interaction in that class is of a certain level. Now, the moment you say IIT Delhi Computer Science has got 4 lakh students in the class,
it doesn't work
because it's all remote. I don't know what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
So then how do we? I'm still struggling with this democratization, access to good teachers.
Democratization is great, and there are MOOCs, and MIT has got open courseware. Okay, but the person doing that is doing it purely for knowledge. It depends on his effort. He does not get the brand or what has a degree from MIT. And he therefore does not carry that label. Right? And that's fine.
So you're saying skills can be acquired, but this whole
skills and knowledge both can be acquired. But people will still want
to go. But will employers, so Sanjeev, on Naukri, do you see people valuing these courses because skills have been acquired? I understand from me as a student, or that experience is not something.
So it depends what course you've done, and more importantly, it depends on how it manifests itself in your day-to-day skills and knowledge.
Yeah. Right. So that's still a ways to go, where I will compare an IIT.
So the assumption is that if you got into IIT, kuch darje ka to ho gaye.
So you, essentially EdTech at its core, because it wants to reach a lot of people.
So supplementary is great. Tuitions for entrance exam is great.
Right.
Giving access to people who are in geographies where they can't get access. Great. Do it at 3 a.m. if you want. And not at the time of the class. Great. But you know, so one thing I'll tell you, what you mentioned, we invested in Merit Nation. We had invested, we sold that business, exited it. So there's one fundamental understanding which we didn't have, and you know, it took us 5 years to learn. Okay, which in hindsight is so obvious. There is a jail theory of school. The jail theory of school is send a kid in there for 6 hours a day. He learns something.
Absolutely.
So fundamentally, 95% of children do not want to study.
Yeah.
They study because they have to study.
And you need the jail for that.
The moment you have unsupervised self-study,
काम नहीं करती है.
Only top 5-10% will actually put effort.
Right.
I think all the Zoom hacks that I keep hearing from my son and his class friends, it actually is exactly what Sanjeev was saying. I just add 2-3 points, right? So I think this is bang on. By the way, we're investors. It's not EdTech in particular, but it's a company that services the education to students. There's a company called Stanza, right, which is India's largest student housing company. For the last 3 months, they're seeing, every university that earlier was managing housing themselves and student accommodation themselves is saying, please come take over our entire our housing facilities. We are barely able to manage with online learning. We are barely able to manage with all this hygiene and sanitization and everything else. So they're seeing that. Second, students are coming back in droves. They all want to come back and live in the campus because exactly what Sanjeev saying. I mean,
they want
college was never about education, right? It's all about peer learning. It's all about social interaction. It's all about, those skills that you get. Yeah, education is one part of it, or, study is one part of it. But I think in my mind, there are 3 or 4 things where education or the online learning will continue, right? One is supplemental. Second is self-paced. There are people who just want to study at their own pace. You don't want to be sort of, somebody wants to do a part-time course. If they want to upskill, right? Think of somebody who's learned one computer language, 5 years ago, and new technologies they're not going to go back to college for that. They will want to upskill on a platform. And I think that is what EdTech is addressing, right? Where there are people and so I don't think EdTech means an IITs and the IIMs and the Ashokas and all those things don't exist. Of course they exist. They will continue to exist and get even stronger. But what will happen is there is a tier 3, tier 4 student who today does not have the means, does not have the access, otherwise would have been forced to a substandard education. Today, the option of a higher quality education online is available.
No, absolutely fair point, right? And I think people in situations that can't do this can, that pacing is a super important piece, right? If you have to be working through this or whatever other things that you might be kind of constrained on, right? So I have one more, just switching gears a little bit and, coming back to, just sort of this whole commerce and supply chain piece here, right? Which again was superbly impacted by this whole thing, right? And Tarun, I think you spoke about small kiranas, etc., through what both of you guys are invested in, absolutely ready now to be digital here, right? And including, what you spoke very eloquently about the D2C and saying that, look, I will deal with you on the video. I don't have to sort of have you come by to tell me, keep this product for me, et cetera, right? Is that a short-term trend, or do you think that this is going to continue? And do you think that the supply chains that feed into this will follow? Right? Because those have been, not just into kirana stores, but most supply chains in this country are very complex and very fragmented, right?
Yeah.
And we did see digital and how digital enabled stuff, through these things, actually did a little better, right? Except for the guys who obviously could get those passes. That was a different beast. But do you see that this is here to stay and, it's out of the den and it's just going to grow?
So maybe I can take a stab at it, Ritu, and I'll give you one example, right? And I think that applies, like I said, to different industries, whether it's the factories, whether it's the retailers and the small businesses, whether it's the customers, right? But the similar trends are playing out. So in my mind, it's never going to be either or, right? It's not that the world is going to be either offline or online. I think eventually India is so underpenetrated on e-commerce today across categories, other than maybe travel, where large part is online. It's so underpenetrated in most categories. Like you just look at seafood.
No,
right?
let me explain, boss. Sorry, may I direct?
Sure, please.
Make My Trip declared a profit last Thursday for the last quarter. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So I think if you look at like say e-commerce, right? Like obviously all of us know a large part of mobile phones and electronics are sold online today, right? But if you take seafood, right? Less than 0.1% of seafood is still is already sold online, right? Everything else is still is offline. Now I'll tell you what's happened. I'll give you an example of one small. It's a recent investment that we made in a company called Dukaan, right? I think the easiest way to describe it is a mobile first Shopify for emerging markets, where it's a very simple onboarding. Think of it as a local, your local store who has never done anything online, right? Today, they were stuck with no access, no availability, no way to sell to their customer base. They had, people WhatsApping them. They were managing WhatsApp, replying the order, sending somebody to deliver the order, stuff like that, right? There were a lot of artisans in smaller, cities and towns and stuff like that. So these people launched the app about 6 months ago. Okay. In 6 months, they've had almost 4 million store owners that have downloaded the app. Of the 4 million, about 2 million have created a store on Dukaan, because it takes them, literally 30 seconds to 5 minutes, depending on how many products they want to add, to launch the store. And with a simple one-click publish, they can start now marketing that link on WhatsApp, on Instagram stories, on Twitter. They can start sharing it on their WhatsApp group, stuff like that. Now, some of them get orders, some of them don't.
Why will they do this is my question, right? If I go back to what Sanjeev said, we're all back in the market.
It's incremental income. I think,
listen,
if anyone tastes,
I continue business as usual, this is a layer on top.
Just think of it, right? If I've published an online catalog, and from that catalog, let's assume I'm making 100 rupees today, right? Even if I start making 5 rupees or 10 rupees.
So you think supplemental.
So if it's extremely infrequent and nobody's coming to that link and buying stuff, over time I will forget it, right? But if I can generate some supplemental income for that businessman, eventually their commercial instinct will take over and say, hey, you know what? And that's how all the restaurants started, right? Hey, let me allocate one person who's just looking at all these Zomato and Swiggy orders. Today, I mean, for them, it's a core part of the business. And I think you will start seeing that for some of these people, once they've tasted blood, they will want to ensure that, hey, you know what? If this is giving me that extra 5-10% supplemental income, I mean, I'll take it gladly.
Sanjay, what do you think? Do you think that this will stay?
No, it will stay. It will stay. But you see, but there will be an equilibrium.
Yes.
There will be an equilibrium found, and so there'll be a step function. It'll come down, and then it'll start running up again.
Correct.
So, but I'm not talking about the consumption pattern, right? But at the store level, the business level and the business supply chain.
So it's like this, yeah. It's like this. Yeah, I don't do it. My next door store does it.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
No, it's like necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And I think this is what
it's a bit of an arms race.
All right, we're at an arms race at small retailers here across this country and supply chains.
So I'll tell you. See, when we launched Naukri 97, right? Around 2001-2, I remember, there was internet penetration that, was about 4 million internet accounts in India at that time. However, all the companies, which had some international linkages, there were Indian officer multinationals, whatever. The HR department would buy our stuff and not use it, right? And I would, when I used to go meet up, why aren't you using it? So in a year, we have to show it in the presentations now, because the international, are you doing e-recruitment? Say, yeah, we've done e-recruitment. We've got an Naukri account. Look. Okay, so sometimes it's arms race, but then eventually it gets used.
Eventually you start using it. Someone says, hey, what the hell, we're paying for this.
That's how you get it. That's how you start. And then
that's how you sort of start. Now, my next question to both of you is, since both of you, well, one of you is still an entrepreneur, if you were building your company today, what would you do?
I mean, nothing different. Focus on the customer.
No. I'll come back to that, Sanjeev. But just from a sector piece, something that you're seeing, is there something that not how you would build Naukri or yeah.
So listen, I mean,
is there an opportunity that you say, hey, look, if I was going to dive in again, here's what I would do today.
So look, I don't have my finger on the next big idea, if that's what you're asking. But in general, I'll say one thing. And I'll come back to the first line you mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, that I always say successful businesses are built on deep customer insights.
Right.
Basically means observe your customer or prospective consumer, figure out what he, she wants, thinking, what are need gaps. And it's a nice piece of sort of gyan to give. But if I tell you a couple of stories, the idea for Naukri, which was launched in 97, came when I was working in my last job in 89, 90. We used to sit in an open hall, 8, 9 marketing executives, all from the IIMs, all highly qualified, right? And I used to observe that when the office copy of Business India would come in, everybody would read it from the back. Because in those days, there were 35 to 40 appointment ads at the back of Business India. And I used to observe this behavior and I said, this is weird. I thought people picked up magazines to read the articles, right? And this insight told me that jobs are a high interest category of information. In 97, 7 years later, I said, when I saw the net for the first time, I said, let's just get all the newspapers and magazines in the country that publish appointment ads and put the appointment ads up there and see what happens. And we hit a hot button. Traffic came without us trying. It went viral, although in those days, viral was not a jargon that was used, but it went viral.
I'm not sure it'll be used again either.
Yes. Second story, and I know we're running out of time, but second story. When I met Deepinder Goyal for the first time in 2010, I didn't know him from before. I asked him, he was running a site called Foodie Bay, which subsequently changed its name to Zomato. I asked him, Deepinder, your idea kahan se aaya? First meeting. He told me, I was working in Bain Consulting in Gurgaon. Deepinder was 27 then, so he was 5 years out of IIT, right? 28 maybe. And he joined IIT straight after, he joined Bain straight after IIT. 1 year gap and then joined Bain, right? And he says that, in Bain was this office which employed 50, 60 people, mostly young, mostly single, mostly male. And hours are long, so you ended up having 2 meals in office, lunch and dinner. And often at a cafeteria that would not serve any food, but you could bring your own food and have it, right? And people do not get food from home because of the demographic, right? So to make life easy for the employees, the admin team had put a file folder of delivery menu cards of 80 restaurants that delivered to that location. And Deepinder said, at 1 o'clock, boss, you got to wait 20 minutes to access the file folder, you get 2 minutes with it, then you order the food, then you wait half an hour, and then the food comes, and I got deadlines to meet, and I'm hungry. So I came in one Saturday, and I scanned those menu cards and put them up on my personal page on the office intranet. He says, 3 days later, the IT infra guy came to me and said, man, what's happened? Why is 98.5% of the traffic internally going to your page? What have you done? Right? He said, that's when the penny dropped. And I realized that aggregation of menu cards has got value. It's not just my problem alone. Right? And so on weekends, he began to go just picking up menu cards. When he had 800 restaurants done, he launched the site and traffic came. Right? So I would look at the customer to give me signals.
Yeah.
बस मैं क्या launch करूं जो customer खरीदेंगे without me having to sell.
Is there anything that you're seeing, Sanjeev, that thanks to this whole pandemic here or the last year, right? Where exactly like the 2 examples that you gave us are amazing.
Yeah, I don't have any great ideas right now.
Nothing.
I've stopped having great ideas. I now look at other people's great ideas and then figure out kiske piche paise lagaye.
Okay. Tarun, if you were starting one today, what would you do?
So I'll answer this question in 2 different ways. One is, I think what you said, I really liked your introduction, Ritu, where you spoke about 21 being the year of adventure, totaling to the roll of dice. So I would actually start a gaming company, and I'll tell you why. If I look around, right, the one thing that drives the Indian youth is hope, right, and is entertainment. And I think gaming is really at the intersection of both these sort of massive needs that people have. Even if I look at, as a venture investor, you're always looking at the intersection of what is a large market and where there is large profitability, right? E-commerce is a large market. So far, profitability has been elusive, right? And so if you look at, I think there are 2 markets today that clearly show large market opportunity and large profit pools. And I think these are edtech and gaming. EdTech has already shown Byju's is profitable, multiple other EdTech companies are profitable, so on and so forth. I think it's already being seen in gaming between Dream11 and a bunch of other companies. These are at scale are highly profitable, right? And haven't burned a ton of capital to get there. And so if I were starting out again, I think I would lean towards doing something in the gaming space.
Absolutely. I 100%, this whole human need to sort of entertain oneself is actually very, very fundamental. And the other thing I think that is like that is food. We all need to eat, and that one doesn't go away. Yeah. Last question for you guys, right? Before, I know we're running out of time, but I know that we have entrepreneurs on this call. So any advice to entrepreneurs from your side that, we talked about cost cutting and, saying this was really good, right? So is there a new normal for entrepreneurs in building their companies, right? Like, or is it the same rules still apply? They never actually ever went away anywhere, but, the sort of the frugality, the insight, the hustle to build is still very similar.
The fundamental principles have not changed. It's just that in an era of abundant capital, sometimes you lose sight of them. Okay. So be frugal, get customers, focus on the customer's money rather than the investor's money. And I have said this repeatedly, and I tell young entrepreneurs that the customer's money is more important than the investor's money. Because if you are getting the customer's money and you're getting it repeatedly from the same customer, and you're getting it at a price that's higher than the cost, then you have a viable business so long as you can get enough customers. And if you are getting the customer's money, the investor's money will almost certainly follow should you want it. Because investors love to invest behind companies that are getting the customer's money, right? But if you get the investor's money first, there's no guarantee that you get the customer's money. Because, investors invest on some evidence, some assumptions. IIT, IIM, PowerPoint ठीक है, अंग्रेजी ठीक बोल देते हैं, पहला चेक मिल जाता है.
फिर उसके बाद क्या?
Yeah. I'll just add to that. I think 2 points I'll make, Ritu. One is, I think if I look back, every great business in India has been built on the back of cost leadership. And I think that is something which a lot of entrepreneurs forget because of the abundance of easy capital, right? And cheap capital coming in. But if you look at any business in India, just name one, right? It's not because that, we don't have too many apples in this country, right? Where they are able to charge such a high premium. And the customers are willing to pay, right? So every business in India is built on cost leadership, right? The second is, I would say, I think as investors also, we have our own sort of role to play in furthering that mistake. But people start, the way a business should be built is you start with, here's my passion, here's the problem I am singularly focused on solving. Then you want to validate that value proposition with a customer and say, is this valuable for you? If I were to solve this, what's the approach to solving it? Will you pay me for it? Then you start thinking about scaling and org and hiring and, burning marketing dollars to, scale that model. But people somehow skip the first two steps. So many people I meet today don't even know whether they're passionate because at the first sign of trouble in a business, and the trouble will come. Like, Sanjeev spoke about Zomato today. It's, it's large scaled, it's profitable. I'm sure there were 100 moments or dozens of moments in the journey that tested his conviction, right? Now, you can't survive that unless and until you are highly, highly passionate about solving the problem, number one. Yeah. Number two, if you validated that the customer will pay, to Sanjeev's point. And then you start thinking about, okay, how do I scale this? Can I grow fast, etc. Unfortunately, because the capital is available so easily, people just jump to step 3. And at some point they realize, oops, I forgot step 1, step 2.
So investors are going to correct
I think
in this year, 2021?
So look, there's a bit of a paradox, right? आपको seed angel round मिल जाएगा, mostly. From there, the cut to institutional capital series A is slightly tough. The cut to series B is even harder. But, so if you are one of the chosen few who've been identified as the winners in that category, you will have more capital than you want or need.
Yeah.
Right? But if you aren't an identified winner, you will have a hard time accessing capital, right?
Right.
So there's at the same time abundance of capital and scarcity of capital, both.
Right. So it just depends where you are in this entire piece. Yeah, right. So, and none of that has changed or expectations to change in the coming year of how
Right.
that sort of way. All right. Great. I hope the entrepreneurs listening have got something out of that. So, but I would like to now, I know we're past time. I'd like to thank you both for your insights. I've had a lot of fun listening to your insights and hearing you guys talk. And, thank you again for taking the time out. I hope the year to come I know it's a gamble, and I hope what you said, Sanjeev, that we are at the tail end of this whole thing. And so it's up from here and without some massive downs to come, and fingers crossed. And, for a much better, newer, higher growth normal. And of course, the safety for everyone here, essentially. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for inviting us.
Sanjeev,
Thank you so
Tarun.
much.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot
for having
joining
us.
Bye,
Really
Tarun.
appreciate it.
See you, bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Bye, Sanjeev,
Bye.
sir. See you. Thank you.